Good to
All right. All right, Sue. Great. So, Sue, we are now recording. I'm going to pass directly over to you to talk about mastering the dominant, invoking the inferior. It's all about balance. And I'm afraid you are going to have to say, just click and I will move on the slides as you need them.
All right. Okay, that's lovely. Well, hello to everybody. It's such a huge pleasure to be here. I'm down in New Zealand. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. To my friends from the UK, congratulations. It's like 9 o'clock in the evening. And to be quite honest, I feel that you should be at the pub. So they've only just opened. So if any of you have a glass of something in front of you, I will raise it in a cheers to you. You've been through a heck of a lot. So please, excellent, Carmel. Just you keep drinking. For those of you in New Zealand, then you should not be having a glass in front of you, I have to say. You are completely sussed. And for those of you in Australia, what can I say? You still up from the night before. I think it's 6 o'clock in the morning. But anyway, it's really, really lovely to see you all to talk about one of my favorite subjects, because the inferior function has always been fascinating to me. I think when I first started learning about type, I was an ESFJ for about the first 2 years of my type experience. And so I sort of feel rather fond of my inferior function. It took me that amount of time to work out that no, I wasn't somebody with a feeling preference. I was actually an ESTJ, and to sort of sit with that and to sit really comfortably with it. So trying to invoke this lovely function, I really enjoy that word of invoking, calling it on, intentionally using it, I think is really, really important. I was also rather proud of my little graphic that I found here about balance, because it's actually got a shadow. Huh, how Jungian is that? Marvelous. So I was thrilled to pieces with that. But anyway, just something I found while I was Googling around. If you could go to the next slide, Sue. So I have a plan, you know, with my preferences as the STJ, of course I have a plan for you. The plan is documented, timed, and I totally intend to stick to it, but that's up to you to a certain extent. So I will be doing an introduction piece for 1/4 of an hour. You'll have breakout sessions in groups of 3 or 4, where I hope you will have some gems to share with each other. And then we will feedback for 1/2 an hour. And again, the feedback sessions I always think is where a lot of the gold comes from. It's a lot of the stuff that we don't normally talk about, but instead of me talking at you, I can do some listening and learning as well. I never consider myself an expert. I just consider myself as somebody who's continually learning in this fascinating topic, and I'm sure some of you are as well. So on to the next slide, Sue. So my journey with type, I really feel that we can see patterns all over the world. There are patterns externally to us in every single area that we look at. The patterns are many. There's this lovely unfolding that happens, whether it's in a plant, whether it's in the solar system. I particularly like that bottom row there, where you've got this pattern of trees and branches. You've got branches and tributaries, not only in rivers, but in our internal organs, our hearts, on trees, with the leaves, with the roots of a tree, with the veins of a leaf. We've got patterns absolutely everywhere. And so just the next slide, Sue. So it's really not at all surprising that we have patterns in the human mind. And I think when we realize that patterning that is all around us, then our own fascination for how many patterns we can see in our mind is just accelerated, because we know, as type practitioners, we know that there are patterns outside in the world, and also with our minds, within our brains. And I'm sure, like me, this is just a constant fascination for all of you. Next slide, Sue. So I've been informed highly for this presentation by a book by Mark Hunziker. It's called Depth Typology. It is, I don't know if anyone else has read it. It's a fantastic read. It does actually do a really deep dive into not only the Jungian functions, but also the archetypes. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I keep going back to it, and I keep sort of being informed by it. So if you haven't read it, please do give that a go. What I tend to think that my role is in the type community is just to take all of this complexity and turn it into something that is much simpler to understand. I enjoy complexity. All you lovely intuitives, can I see another sensing? I think I can see two sensing people on what I am looking at here. Well done, congratulations. We've stood the test of time. Being amongst you intuiting folk is just wonderful. I totally get a huge kick out of it. You extend my thinking massively. But just to be honest, you make it a bit complicated. Just saying, just putting it out there. So my role, I think, is just to make it that little bit more simple. Next slide, Sue. So I love this quote by Jung: "The underlying primary psychic reality is so inconceivably complex that it can be grasped only at the farthest reach of intuition, and then but very dimly. And that is why it needs symbols." Symbols are enjoyed by all types. Certainly from a sensing perspective, we love the concreteness of them. As soon as you give us something concrete, we can expand from there. And obviously, all you lovely intuiting folk, it's something you work with, you live by, you are drawn to all of the time. But the symbols actually work in all respects. Next slide, Sue. For those of you who've seen some of my presentations before, these will be very familiar to you. So I attach symbols or diagrams, graphics, whatever you like to call them, to all of the 8 functions. I still use these. They still are important to me, and you'll see them coming up again in the presentation later on. But the perceiving functions, we've got extroverted sensing, that being in the moment, being ready to see and be with what is actually in front of you. And I like that sort of juggling balls idea, just being able to manipulate things in the present moment. Introverted sensing, the USB stick. I've got a memory, I've got so many things in my memory, and what a gift it is that I can just go into that space and call it out again. The extroverted intuiting, the brainstorming, with that thinking like a ball in a pinball machine. Just bing, 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 bing. Just, I think of it as joining the dots without looking at the numbers, just constantly doing this exercise of what can I link from here to there. And introverted intuiting, that lovely clearing of the mist. This is a slow burn compared to extroverted intuition. On the judging functions, the Sudoku puzzle for extroverted thinking, it's logical, it's got a system to it. It's that systematizing, as Sue and I have called it on our type trilogy cards. And then introverted thinking, that funnel of questions. It doesn't need to have an outcome other than another question, that constantly funneling through the questions. Extroverted feeling, always giving, helping hands, absolutely. And probably the one that's least familiar to you, or something you might not connect with immediately, is this tuning fork for introverted feeling. They are really seeking resonance throughout their whole life. Their meaning and purpose is to seek and find resonance. So that tuning fork is really constantly going off, going, does this sound right? And if it's resonant, that's great. And if it's dissonant, and it jangles, then that's something that they find very, very difficult to deal with. So constantly seeking resonance. Next slide, Sue. I'm also fascinated by the archetypes. So as with the other things, I've kind of simplified them. My apologies if this offends anybody, but this was in order to help me really understand them. You can see on the left-hand side, we've got the 1st to the 4th of the 8 functions, and on the right hand side we've got the 5th to the 8th functions. They're also linked horizontally with compatible names, so let me briefly go through those. If anybody would like to contact me and I can take them through much more of this in more detail, I would be delighted to have a little Zoom geek out with you and take you a little bit further down this road. But the 8 archetypes, I have the hero, the dominant function is the controller. And then we've got on the other side the quality controller. So this is where the names sort of link in, and that's actually the 5th function. We've got on the left there the supportive parent, which is your auxiliary, and on the right that linking name, the critical parent. And then we've got the tertiary, the curious child, and then the 7th, the devious child. And then we've got the 4th function there, the inferior function, which I hate calling inferior because I think it's so important, is this balancer, moderates and considers the opposite perspective. And then the 8th function I've called the unsettler, throwing you off balance in really unpredictable ways. But just for today, onto the next slide, Sue, we are going to be looking at the controller and the balancer, the dominant and the inferior function. So the controller we know all about. It's our hero, it's our Oscar-winning performance, it's the one for which we get the most medals in our life along the way. So this function is the most developed part of the personality, the lead actor in your personal play, a hero figure. When used well, you feel strong, resilient, and satisfied. It's the dominant and leading function. And then we have the balancer, who we need to call upon in order to make sure that we do have a sense of balance in our lives. And this balancer, this function acts as a balance to the dominant function. Once developed, it can provide a reminder, a timely tap on the shoulder to consider the opposite perspective and be cautious. The fourth and inferior function. Actually, I was reading something of Dario's recently. He was saying the functions are so named because they're similar to mathematical functions. They have a doing about them, just in the same way as plus, minus, divided, times, all of those things. They do something with the numbers, and our functions do something in our world for us as well, rather in the same way as a mathematical function. Next slide, Sue. So many of us, especially those of who are unfamiliar with type and don't sort of understand this journey of individuation, which we've all been blessed to be able to get to understand, we're kind of on autopilot a lot of the time. You know, we just let our dominant function let rip, and possibly the auxiliary comes in to help us, but really autopilot can be a little bit dangerous from time to time. So that's the reason why we need to do this invoking of the inferior function. And as I mentioned to you before, it is all about balance. We should be balancing things out, and balancing comes in so many different aspects of our lives. Next slide, Sue. So we balance all the time as soon as we take a breath. We're taking a breath in and then we let it out again. Jane Kesey, I think you're there somewhere, though I can't see you here. I know you do an exercise where you get everybody to hold their breath and hold it and hold it and hold it and hold it until you can no longer hold it anymore. And then you just have to breathe out again. I won't ask you to do that because I seem to remember passing out almost nearly one of the times I did that. But this breathing in and breathing out, we have balance in our lives the whole time. Next slide, Sue. Same with the tides. The tides come in, the tides go out. This happens absolutely naturally. It should be something that is normal within our environment. And the next one, Sue. Equally with our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, we can't stop in one of those places. We are going to have to be interchanging, going from one to the other. If we're constantly in fight mode, or if we're constantly in rest and relax mode, is not going to work for us. We need to get up in the morning, and we also need to have calm. So this idea of balance is very much there in our lives. And I have this slide here about the healthy body heals itself, and so does a healthy mind. And I have the fingerprint there because there's a bit of a story there for me. And that is that I had one of those dodgy fridges. I don't know if anyone of you has had a dodgy fridge. And I had some carrots at the back of the fridge, and the carrots ended up being frozen. You know, there was something obviously wrong with the electrics. And I had a sharp knife, and I was busy chopping carrots, and my knife slipped because the carrot was frozen. And I actually just topped off the top of my finger. It was to the extent, ouch, I know some of you are going, yes, it was a bit ouchy, I have to say. And I did have to go to the A&E department, and it was chopped off to the point they said, do you still have the bit? I was like, no, like, who do you think I am? Do I pick up bits of my finger to take to the hospital? No, I don't. I left it behind very sensibly on the kitchen bench. Anyway, over the next 4 or 5 weeks, I was going to and fro from the hospital to get this sort of sorted. Every single person who bandaged my finger said to me, you know, there's a really, really interesting thing about fingerprints. And that is you cannot scar your fingertips. I realize you are now all going to look at your fingertips just to see if you can prove me wrong. And I have to say it's the exceptions to the rule that keep the experts humble. So if you happen to have scars on your fingertips, then you are mighty unusual. However, normally speaking, you cannot scar your fingertips. Your fingerprint will come back exactly as it was. And so intriguing. And I think it's the same with personality type. It doesn't matter what we do, where we go, what we've done through nurture, nature, whatever experiences we've had, our personality will out. It's there. It's going to happen, and our bodies will heal, and we will use these different areas of our personality type. Next slide, Sue. So I had various reflections having read Mark Hunziker's marvelous book, and I just want to share some of those reflections with you, and then we'll sort of get onto the exercise and get into groups. So the first reflection I had is, in order to differentiate, first you need to want to. And I think that's really important, especially when we're talking about our functions that go beyond the auxiliary function, going on to these, tertiary and inferior functions, and certainly this sort of shadow side. But to differentiate, first you need to want to. Next one, Sue. To develop the inferior function, we must create a safe place where we can go to play and experiment. Let's try this out, and try it out not in a stressed situation, but try it out when we're actually feeling on top of the world, when we are feeling good and strong. That's when it's a really good time to call on it, because then when you are in a really difficult situation, you've got the rehearsal, the brain knows how to do it. Next point is, our hero can often convince us it's a waste of time. So if you are in that sort of stressed state, then again, your hero is going to run away with you, and it can say, we don't need that function. You're doing perfectly well on your own. Just use more of your dominant function, and you'll just dominant function your way out of this. But actually, that's the moment we need to say, hold on a minute. What can I learn from my inferior function? And then the last one, Sue. Conflict forces us to seek the wisdom of the inferior. And I think there's another part to that, Sue, as well. It can become our survival tool if we know it's there, and if only we can ask the questions of it that we need to ask. It can save our bacon, and it has certainly saved mine, I can assure you. Just on the next slide. So the dominant without the inferior becomes a caricature of itself. It really does. Those juggling balls there start being thrown all over the place, bounced against the walls, might hit you in the head. The USB, the USB gadget there just becomes full of memories that you can't actually drop. The ball in the pinball machine just goes ballistic and starts firing around at a rate that you can't cope with. That introverted intuiting becomes dreaming and visioning to a state that you actually don't get anything done. And as you can see with the others, it's equally. As soon as you start getting into overload and overwhelm, there's too much organizing from extroverted thinking, too much questioning from introverted thinking, too much caring without thinking about yourself. Oh, and by the way, I'm fine, with extroverted feeling. And then that resonance you just never find it when you get into that overload of the dominant function. Here's another few slides that I rather like. The dominant function just has a blast and has no reins on it. And it's rather like this out of control horse. There it goes. It's got no one controlling it, no one's guiding it, no one's steering it. It's just got out of control. And then there's this option, which frankly, I think is a bit irritating. I think if you actually meet somebody that's got themselves this sorted, it's just a bit, well, really good for you. That's marvelous, but it's not normal in life, I don't think, to have somebody who's so sort of organized and got it all together. Surely you've got some difficulties. I'm sure there are. I've just got to sort of find them. But so this isn't normal life either. But what I think is rather normal is that, yes, you have an element of control, and then you have an element of the horse doing the thing that it wants to do, and you kind of rumble with it. Brené Brown has got a lovely expression of rumbling. And the rumbling with it, I think, is really important. Yeah, I've kind of got it, but I'm just working hard at this. I'm just trying to get it sorted. And that, I think, is far more realistic. So the important question I'm going to give you the option to talk about is, what questions should our inferior function ask of us? I believe it is like this lovely psychotherapist that sits on our shoulder and hopefully taps us on the shoulder and just says, what is it that you should be telling me right now? What is it that I should be knowing? And this is what we're going to do. So here's my list of questions. I'm almost excited because I've almost kept to the 15 minutes. almost. So in your breakout discussion, you might want to just take a photo of this. We'll put some of these questions in. But if you want to grab your camera and take a photo of it, then hopefully you're going to be with somebody who has got these questions. We will put some of them on the board. Look at the handout, go to the questions which relate to your dominant function. Discuss how these questions may help you to invoke the inferior function. Do you agree? I'm not saying that I've got the absolute answers to all this, but I'm fascinated to hear from you. Do you agree? Would you make any changes? And is there a comment you would like to share with the group? I don't think we're going to be able to take all of the comments, although we'll stay online afterwards if anybody wishes to keep chatting. But just think of a comment that you would like to share with the group. And while Sue's getting everybody into those groups, I'll just head to the next slide. Just in case you are unsure of your dominant function, then just find the one that relates to you. So you're looking at the questions for. So whatever it is your dominant function. So you're looking at the questions for. If your ESTP is extroverted sensing. If your INTP, it's introverted thinking.
The link, Cindy just asked, is the link there? The link is in the in chat if you go back through it. And hopefully, let me just put this back just so that you can make sure that you know what you're discussing in your groups. I'll also be able to send a quick reminder about with bullets 3 and 4 with a broadcast message, but the broadcast message only stays up for a minute. So just make sure you know what do you think about those questions. All right, so I think we're ready to open the rooms. Does anybody have any questions on the activity before I send you all away?
Have a good chat, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you back.
Linda, I just put the link in chat about 2 minutes ago, but I'm happy to do it again.
If you don't have the handout, I'm sure somebody in your group will have it and can tell you your questions, so don't panic. And I'll see you again in 13 minutes. You'll get a 1-minute call to come back, and I will see you all then.
Hang on a second. It looks like a lot of people haven't been assigned. Sue, how many people are you still seeing on the screen?
Uh, 31.
I never got an invite.
That's weird. Are you not in a breakout room, Linda? I think you are in a breakout room.
Oh, do we have to find it ourselves?
I think,
Or are we being assigned?
yeah, I don't see the breakout room buttons.
No.
I
Yeah,
don't
me
think
neither.
anyone's been prompted.
Yeah.
All right,
no.
let me go back out then and let me close all rooms and I'll reassign. Hold on a second.
Maybe Sue's the only one in the breakout room.
I think maybe that's it.
Yeah, no breakout buttons. Is she the host or are you?
She's the co-host. She needs to leave the breakout room. Breakout rooms. All breakout rooms in 6 seconds. All right, I just need to wait for them to shut. There we go. And then I'll be able to reallocate. All right, recreate. 9 rooms, assign automatically. 3 to 4 participants per room. Recreate, open all rooms. Hopefully that should do it this time. Off you go. Zoom recording. There you go.
Great. Well, I hope you had some fabulous conversations. We are very able to stay online afterwards and just have have a little geek out on it. If anybody wants to hang around and talk about this, that would be absolutely marvelous. But I'd just like to hear from you all briefly. I think possibly we have so many people, we've got somebody from each of these dominant functions who might be able to make a quick comment. In my ESTJ style, we have 2 minutes per function. So if you could keep your comments to being brief, and as I say, I would love to hear more from you a little bit later on. We are blessed, I believe, to have at least one person I know. Nicholas, you are here. Oh, and Judy, extroverted sensing as well. So questions for extroverted sensing from introverted intuition. What evidence from the environment can help you anticipate the implications for the future? Is it worth tuning into the less obvious? And do you have time to imagine? How did those questions go for you? Judy or Nicholas, you want to speak to those?
Sure, I'll speak to them. I'm not sure if Nicholas is here. I can't see him on the participant list. Yeah, so I found that in discussion, I skipped right past those first 2 questions and went right into the time for imagination, and found that I'm often past midlife, and during the midlife turn, I really was able to find ways to access that inner world through moving meditation, dreams, visualizations, etc. So I know how important it is now. So that's very helpful. And the other 2, it took me time to go back to them because
fair enough.
Any reference in the future, I'm like, okay, whatever, move on. So after our group discussed all theirs, then I went back and looked at, and I think the tuning into the less obvious is a good reminder for me to keep in mind when I'm so sure that I already know what needs to happen next, that I probably need to stop myself and ask that question.
Yeah. And interesting, I think we all need to be intentional about this. Discussion I had in my group is unless we have that intention to go there, then it can sort of slip your mind. So I love that you found that space, Judy, to do your imagining. So can you just go on to the quotes for me that I had for the extroverted sensing? Not everything that counts, not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted, from Albert Einstein. And imagination creates reality. I think that's really important for those with extroverted sensing, just getting that sense of the importance of imagination. So thanks, Judy. On to the next one. Questions from SI, so our introverted sensing folk. I think we have some here too. If anybody wants to explain what these mean for them. Now that you have the foundation set, where else can this take you? Is there another way? Could it be more fun? Have you spent enough time exploring the potential? So do we have any ISTJs or ISFJs? I can't quite see. If anybody wants to unmute. Do we? Maybe we don't.
I think,
okay, I'm going to
I think Tim's just unmuting as I see it.
Yes, I have unmuted. I must say I found these questions very unhelpful. Being a T, I had already processed and come to my conclusions, and so I found the questions superfluous. I caricature, but that would be the immediate response.
Okay, do you think they would be helpful? Could you intentionally go towards them? Do you think they could inform you in a positive way?
I would have to step backwards and work through rework the processes I've already been through.
Okay, interesting. Very good. Was there another ISTJ or ISFJ out there?
I didn't see one from the list. No, I don't know if someone who hadn't put their type code there.
Maybe it's fair to say that that's actually quite difficult for you. Certainly for me, as having introverted sensing as a auxiliary function. The could it be more fun, which is such an important question for me. It's great that I'm married to an ENTP. I would have had far less fun if I'd been married to somebody who was another SJ. I just think it needs to be the spur for me to just think otherwise, to push myself to think outside of the box. And I do quite like that. I can take brainstorming, but I remember somebody in a meeting once said to me, now let's all do some blue sky thinking. And I was like, really, must we? Does we have to right now? How long is this going to take? And when's the proper work going to start? If you could just wake me up when you're done, then that would be great. And on we can go. So I do really need to be prodded to use some of these questions. So these questions are helpful for me too.
So Jane Kesey says, my ISFJ mom might say, what new things can I learn? And I also saw, did I see was there a hand raised? Let me just have a look at the participant list. Yes, Josh raised his hand.
Okay,
yeah, I was in a group with Tim, and I just wanted to say, there was a thing he said about, is there another way? Could it be more fun? That it's more fun to just go with the plan, like rather than rework it.
Okay, Tim, lighten up, okay? Look up, lighten up. Quotes to live by. There's a way to do it better, find it. And creativity is intelligence having fun. So we need to think, we need to tune in there. The next one, Sue. So questions for extroverted intuiting. Heaven knows we must have quite a few of you here, so I'm sure you're going to all shoot up your hands at the same time. But what can I learn from history that can inform my creativity? Is what I am about to do a mistake I've made before, and have I got the right sequence? So if somebody could talk to those, that would be great. We must have an ENFP or an ENTP here, otherwise we will be the first type community in history that hasn't.
Okay.
Well done, Claire.
Not my favorite thing to do, but well, what I said is there's so much of history that it just gives me so many more opportunities to be creative. And have projects and from my own personal history, I can say, okay, you're going too far, or, that's not going to work. So that would curb my creativity, or say, that's just not practical. Hate that word. No, I'm just kidding. And I'm old enough that I've certainly I've made mistakes before, and I've learned to, and thanks to the Myers-Briggs, seriously, I really have tried to apply it in my life. I don't always do it totally well, but I think I'm pretty good at it. And have I got the right sequence? I'm pretty good at planning. When I'm motivated, I can plan things out. Okay, I want this to happen, and this is going to have to happen, and then this is the next. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you very much. And I, for the ENFPs and ENTPs I have spoken to, have enjoyed the right sequence piece, because they just have so many ideas that come at them, just to get that 1, 2, 3. So let's eliminate all of the millions of options that you've got, and let's just see if we can find the first 1, 2, 3. I was coaching an ENFP not too long ago, and it says you can think of lots and lots of different things, but we'll just stick to 3 first, and if you think of another one, then one of the others has got to drop out. So it was that kind of thinking. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, one of the best things anybody ever said to me was, well, you've got to prioritize. And I went,
yeah.
Oh, well, that's an interesting thought.
There's a novel concept for you, Claire. Yeah. Great. So quotes to live by for our extroverted intuiting is, let go of the past, but keep the lessons it taught you. And the best thing about memories is making them. So on to our next group, which is questions for introverted intuiting. I certainly know we have a few of those. So from extroverted sensing, what's doable now? What is the best way to get a reality check? And what activity can I do to ground myself? Does anyone have a comment on one of those?
Sure, Sue. I'll give a
Thanks, David.
thoughts on it. I was especially drawn to the third question. What activity can you do to ground myself?
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, I paint. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the extroverted sensing things about painting is the actual seeing something and copying it and drawing it. And that's a very small part about my autistic process. But the drawing part is a part that I always do. And actual physically drawing to get a structure. I only spend a few minutes drawing, and then I do whatever I want afterwards, but I want to have that structure. So that one part is, I think, something that does ground me. So I thought that was a good question.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Anyone else? Even if you have it as a auxiliary function, you might want to make a comment.
This is Jane, whose
Oh,
camera's
Jane.
off after a too energetic walk, Sue. These are good. And as I get older, the biggest question I hear from extroverted sensing is, what should you be enjoying or paying attention to right now? Because your future is getting shorter.
Excellent. Yeah, that being in the moment can be very elusive, I find, for INFJs and INTJs. I think it's one of the or two of the types that really have found a lot out of kind of this mindfulness season that we're all in. I think mindfulness very often is kind of extroverted sensing. I wonder how many people with extroverted sensing are just rolling their eyes and going, well, what do you mean you have to focus on taste or focus on what you're seeing? They're just thinking, well, I do that all the time anyway. Why do I need to just have this sort of process to do it? Whereas the people with introverted intuition as a dominant function are going, heavens, that's a great idea. So, you know, there's so much difference in everybody, isn't there? So thank you for that, Jane. Just the quotes that I've got for our introverted intuiting: start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible, and suddenly you are doing the impossible. From Francis of Assisi. Many moons ago, he knew what he was talking about. And then the real risk is doing nothing. Sometimes activity is just required right now. On to the next one, Sue. We're doing quite well for time, folks. Well done, everybody. So this is me, questions for extroverted thinking from Introverted Feeling. I have to say I have to thank Dario for two of these, reading his fantastic book, The Magic Diamond. If you haven't got it yet, then it's an excellent read. But two of these come from Dario, because I couldn't make them any better. But for extroverted thinking, what matters most? What does my conscience tell me? And what can I live with? Any other people with extroverted thinking out there want to add to this?
I don't see any other ENTJs or ESTJs.
No,
Yes.
Oh, there you are, Tor.
Yeah, you really have to have honesty. If you don't have honesty, what's left? I started a consulting company with a guy, INTP, and he started to lie to me. And that was the end of it. And the interesting thing was that he and his company went bankrupt just 1 year after I left them. Probably had something to do with honesty.
Yeah. We were talking, Thor, we ended up in the same group, and we were saying that this introverted feeling is like the fuel in our tank that gets us moving. Now, once we've got to our 40s and 50s, it was really important to have that purpose and meaning. It probably wasn't there in our 20s and 30s to quite the extent, but that lovely tuning fork that gives us resonance. Does this feel right? Am I doing the right thing? And importantly for me, this idea of what can I live with? I had a difficult COVID experience last year of being stuck on a very small island with my 93-year-old parents. The ESTJ part of my personality was completely clamped down. It had absolutely nothing to do. And I reined in my behavior by what can I live with? What can I live with now in the next 2 weeks and the next month and next goodness knows how long I'm going to be stuck on this island? I'm going to make sure that I don't regret my behaviors. And so that for me was introverted feeling, just really helping me out at a time that I was considerably stressed. So thank you, Tor. The quotes here are, when your values are clear to you, making decisions becomes easier. Roy Disney was actually Walt Disney's nephew. And then, dear Albert, strive not to be a success, but rather to be of value. With extroverted thinking as a dominant function, you can be dead sure we're going to be striving. But striving for something of value is when we are invoking our inferior function. On to the next one, Sue. From TI, is an expression of feeling required to resolve this problem? Has everyone been heard? And is this the most tactful approach? Do we have any INTPs or ISTPs out there? Linda.
Well, I made up my own question before we got there.
All right.
Partly because I work closely with my ENFJ daughter. So, I mean, I thought, what does this person need from me now? So if I just ask me, what do they need? But these questions all work for me.
Right.
Although I don't have any trouble with, because of my facilitation skills, I think, I don't have any trouble with, I don't have to remind myself, has everyone been heard? But maybe I need to think about heard as really heard. Like felt heard.
Have they been really, really heard? Yeah. And to sort of double check, to go back in there. Because sometimes the inferior function can just get a bit of a glance. And we might need to track back to it and just go, have I really used this function, or have I just glanced over it? Thank you for that. So the quotes for this one, the more room you give yourself to express your true thoughts and feelings, the more room there is for your wisdom to emerge. And tact is the art of making a point without making an enemy. The last two, I think we can do it within time, I think. Okay, questions for extroverted feeling. I absolutely know there's some of you out there. Have you defined the root cause of the issue? What questions have yet to be asked, and can you step away and be objective? Any offers on that one? Shona.
I can share a little. So the third question really stood out to me. Can you step away and be objective? And what's interesting is I had a hard time seeing that I wasn't actually fully objective until I spoke with another introverted thinker that shared with me their perspective of the exact same situation. It was vastly different to mine. Yeah. So I'd say that one's the most, that's the one that resonates the most.
Great, thank you. And I found that with people with extroverted feeling, they can kind of be objective for only so long. They can try. I'm going to do this, and then they kind of fall in an exhausted heap and just say, oh, please understand me. So it's that sort of experience I have found. Anybody else want to make a quick comment?
If I could just make a comment as an introverted thinker.
Yes, Anne.
First question, have you defined the root cause of the issue? I find that my thinking, I want to know what the root cause is. And so that makes me listen to people and hear their problems.
Yes, because the inferior function is actually fairly devoted to the dominant function. So if it's going to be in service to it, then absolutely you will call on it. The quote, Sue, for extroverted feeling, we make our world significant by the courage of our questions and by the depth of our answers. And don't be afraid of the answers. Be afraid of not asking the questions. So I think yes, Shona.
So sorry to interrupt. May I go back just one more comment about that middle question out of curiosity?
Yes, please.
So that middle question, it got me thinking instantly of all of my introverted intuitive ideas. So I'm wondering if that question, adding something about being objective, analytical, or logic would really narrow that focus to more of an introverted thinking as opposed to an introverted intuitive approach that I would naturally kind of draw on.
Yeah, I always, introverted intuition and introverted thinking have similarities in that they require quiet and deep thought and sort of solitude to get to them, but they still have a different quality to them. So that's a good comment. Thanks, Shona. On to the the final one, and then we can have questions at the end. So the questions for introverted feeling from extroverted thinking. What accomplishments are possible which stem from my beliefs? Can I be more efficient when I aim to make a difference? And is there a workable system that will help? So do we have some INFPs or ISFPs here who would like to make a comment on that?
Yes, I felt a bit uncomfortable with the question due probably to the first one, because accomplishment to me, I had more the impression it was more leaning to the extroverted sensing, the extroverted thinking. And so by confusion, then the more efficient and the workable system, I had the kind of impact of the first sentence on the two next one, because efficient, okay, is not necessarily extroverted sensing. But so I had the impression it was more coming from my extroverted sensing than from my extroverted thinking.
Okay, great, thank you. So,
yeah, I would maybe propose what kind of clear decision can I take that stem from my beliefs, for example.
All right. Okay, lovely, thank you. And that's a good comment, thank you. Anybody else want to make a comment?
I just want to observe, Sue, it's a bit like when you picked the images for the cognitive processes. Sometimes just setting the scene with these types of questions facilitates people identifying the question that works for them. So maybe these aren't the definitive list, it's a stimulus to thought to get you to the question that would work for you.
Yes, thank you, Sue. Now, this is not the only version of these questions. It's just something that hopefully can give you a framework to get some sort of thinking. And in all our work, we are creating conversations. We're just enabling people to have those conversations. Thank you for that. And so my quotes for introverted feeling are, organizing is what you do before you do something, so that when you do it, it is not all messed up. You're gonna love Winnie the Pooh. And then a bad system will beat a good person every time. Josh, I think you had your hand up just to mention something quickly there.
Yeah, can you go back to the next slide just to jog my memory again?
Yes.
Yeah, I really liked what accomplishments are possible which stem from my beliefs. Because like in that, the question is so like uniquely to you, because it's like if you're not honoring the beliefs which are coming up for you, then who's going to do that? Like it needs to be you that does that. So
yeah, absolutely. No, thank you, well said. Thank you very much, Josh. Okay, and on to back to the reflections. I hope that you will reflect more on these. But just to go through mine again, to differentiate, you first need to want to. We need to be intentional about this, I think. It can happen to a certain extent, but it happens so much better if we're intentional about it. We need to create a safe place for it. We need to be aware of the time that our hero is telling us not to bother. It is an important tool. It can be our survival tool. Certainly it was for me last year to keep thinking about this. And the body and the mind self-correct to heal as needed. That's what we do. So thank you all very much. I think there might be one last slide. There we go. It's all about balance. Let's keep ourselves in balance and go well, be well. Let's all have a healthy future. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a pleasure to be here.
We'll be around. I can stop the sharing so that I'll stop the recordings, but we're very happy to stay on and chat. I can't remember the exact words you used, Sue, but